Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Sydney Parkhurst. Looking forward to our conversation, Sydney.
Yeah, excited to be here,
Yeah,
especially for such a milestone,
yeah,
400 episodes.
yeah. I was just saying to Sydney, it's nuts. This is the 400th episode. And episode 100 seemed to be a big thing. But since then, 200 and 300 or 250 even hasn't seen, they've just gone past. I haven't noticed them, but for some reason I've noticed this is 400.
Mm-hmm.
So Sydney, as always, if you've noticed, listeners, we're pretty much it's adoptees all the way on this show now, especially people so passionate about helping other adoptees. So Sydney's an advocate and helps people do a lot of work. Adoptees would do the work and story work. She's into videos, which is a whole different thing. But I was having a look at Sydney's website and links to that in the show notes. And in the about you on the about you page, Sydney, you say that you said that when at the University of Tampa. I'll just read it, shall I? At the University of Tampa, I took a writing class and chose adoption as my subject for a research paper. I assumed that all I would have to do is tell my story, do a little research, and I'd get an automatic A, right? So who just, that's what we want, don't we? Minimum work, maximum output. Well, that's not exactly what happened. As I was researching, I came across the words transracial adoption. Ironically, I had absolutely no idea what that meant, but when I found out, my whole world flipped upside down. So what was it that was flipped upside down? How did your world change?
Yeah, so I went through like a whole they say like coming out of the fog moment throughout that little journey, but a little backstory so you can understand where I'm coming from. But I took a DNA test when I was in high school, like senior year, found out that I was half Black, but kind of like pushed it under the rug because all I wanted to do when I was younger was fit in with everyone around me. I was in a town that was 94.7% white. My family or my parents are white. So I didn't have a lot of people that looked like me around me. So pretty much just went through life trying to fit in, hated my hair, straightened it, did all the things to make it look like everyone else around me. So when I found out like through the DNA test that I was half Black, it didn't really resonate with me at all at the time. I kind of just was like, oh, okay, and then put it to the side until COVID happened. And I was contacted by my half sister through Instagram. And before this, I had no idea that I was ever going to find any part of my birth family. And so when she reached out to me, it was a bit of a surprise. And I opened up this world to literally like finding family that I had never in a million years dreamed of finding, and stories I had never like found before. So and after that, after like finding my half sister, I kind of figured out like I was like, okay, maybe I will try to embrace my identity instead of like hide it away. So I started to like during the time that literally everything was shut down, I was able to like finally sit still and like figure out who I was, like come into my identity a little bit more. And I've been going up to like white hairstylists like all before that. Hated my hair so much. I did go to one Black hairstylist, and that's where I got my hair relaxed, which was a very bad idea. Ruined my hair.
Oh, right.
But that's kind of like where you try to make your hair straight, and it like chemically is not good. So after that, I was like, maybe I should like try to embrace my curls and embrace like who I was. And I was also in the process of transferring to another school, University of Tampa. And so there was a lot of like changes happening, but also at the same time, like COVID was happening and I had a chance to figure a little bit of things out before. And so when I got to college, I was taking this class and it was like a intro to research because I had to like take a bunch of baseline classes before I could take some of my major classes. So I was like, all right, I'll just like get this over with. I love writing, so I was like, okay, like I'll just like write this paper and then focus on the things that I think are way more important. But since I just figured out like who my half sister was and everything, I was like, okay, maybe I'll like focus on adoption because that's something that's relevant in my life right now. Um, then I came across these words, transracial adoption, and I read them and I was like, what the heck? Like, and I was supposed to like narrow down my topic from adoption to something else. So I ended up narrowing it down to transracial adoption, figuring out this whole like world of adoption and transracial adoptees, and um, found a lot of people that had stories just like mine and related to a lot of them. And so through there, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a huge like revelation in my life. I basically had no idea any of this was out there. Um, Became really interested in like figuring out the psychology behind adoption, the psychology behind like growing up as an adoptee and like as a transracial adoptee. So um, I was contacted by my professor after I would written the paper, and she was like, um, would you want to do something more with this? Like there's a research grant that you can do over the summer. You can apply for, and then you get it, you can do it over the summer. And you're basically just, you can do anything with it. But for this, like she was like, you can write an essay and then put it into like a scholarly journal. Um, but like she's like, I understand you want to research more about this, and like that would be really cool. So I ended up applying, got the grant, and over the summer I spent my time like creating a website, writing blogs, and creating a YouTube channel where I like interviewed other adoptees, and just figured out like who I was as an adoptee, and also found like a huge community behind me that was really cool. So yeah, that was like the essay, and it turned into an autoethnography. But that was kind of what changed my whole perspective on adoption, and like figured out my identity through them. So
Yeah. So can you break that down a little bit for us, the identity piece? Because had this 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 thing about hair.
Yeah.
It's like it's huge, isn't it? And white guys like me don't really don't get it. Do you know what I mean? We don't get
Right.
we don't get that. I've only had maybe 3 hairstyles in my life. Okay,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? And the hairstyle of my hair isn't particularly important to me, apart from
Right.
the fact that I am taking some tablets at the moment to hopefully stop it thinning out. Right, got some special shampoo that doesn't seem to be working, but my hair is thinning out, and it's looking like I'm going to go bald. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to delay that. But apart from that, you know, until I was whatever 55, my hair wasn't important to me. So it's like the on one level we've got this hair thing, and at another level we've got the whole kind of race and identity piece. How do they all fit together?
Yeah, so I think the Black community in general, like hair is a huge thing. It's part of culture. So growing up, I didn't realize that. I didn't really, all I knew was I had this curly hair that was like all over the place. I didn't know how to manage it. My mom didn't know how to manage it. She tried her best. But it was something that I hated for years because I just couldn't. And I think that part of me, like was with me for like a really, really long time of just hating a lot of the things about myself that were like different from everyone else. Um, and I didn't understand it. I just didn't know how to manage it or anything. Um, and so I think that's one of the things, I don't know if we want to like get deeper, but
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that adoptees like have to go through is um, that like loss of culture, that especially like transracial adoptees who are that loss of culture that you don't get if you're not raised by people who like look like you. So I think for me, when I was younger, and struggled a lot with identity and like figuring out who I was. I just wanted to be someone else, though, like for so long. I literally just wanted to be someone with like straight hair. I wanted to like just look differently than I looked. And so as I got older and like try to figure out like who I was and like tried to manage my hair and like I even now I still like struggled with my hair stuff, but it's definitely a lot better that I know now how to manage it and who I am and like why my hair looks like this, why so yeah, it's just like been a whole journey of figuring out who I was while also like figuring out my hair.
Okay.
So
So the hair was kind of a visible or a top level symptom of something that was deeper, and
right.
this. So because what happens is, I think, this is kind of what I've heard from transracial adoptees, or the transracial adoptees that I've interviewed for the show. There's a feeling that you don't fit in, and then there's the visible proof that you don't fit in, because you're not the same. You've not got the same type of hair. You don't the same skin color, and that seems to form like a vicious circle. It just spirals. Yeah, we're talking about curly hair. So do you know what I mean? I'm talking about spiraling, but it's quite opposite, is it? It that just kind of, it keeps on feeding itself, that loop.
Exactly.
And so this feeling of isolation and this desire to be somebody else just grows. It's like pressure. Is it like pressure building? It's like pressure building, and then kaboom! You hear this. You see this phrase, transracial adoption. You've not heard of that before, and suddenly everything blows at that point. All the pent up stuff that's been going on comes up out, and it suddenly it's clear.
Exactly. Yeah, that was when as soon as I found out that there's a whole community out there that has stories a lot like my own, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't feel so alone in and it's okay to be different. It's okay. Everyone's different. Everyone's like, I think that was one of the biggest learning curves that I learned like throughout this journey is like, I don't have to be like everyone else. I am my own person. I look differently, but I'm supposed to look differently, and that's okay to look differently. And that's identity. So I think figuring that out as I got older and like after figuring out what transracial adoption was, that opened so many doors for me and made me feel like I actually like I belong. Like I'm like someone who is different, but everyone's different. You're supposed to be there.
Because I think it says, what does it say? I'm just going back to the front page of your website. Yeah. It says you were born to stand out. So there's like a 180-degree shift.
Right.
It seems to me. So you've gone from being desperate to fit in to celebrating the facts that you stand out.
Exactly. Yeah. It's definitely something. I think once I did get a little bit of a confirmation, I think when I was younger, I did always look for someone that looked like me, but they just were not there at all. So I think that kind of scared me a little bit, and I was like, oh God, like I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So I think as I found like more of my birth family and like more of my story kind of got like put together, and like I was able to see what my half sister looked like and that there were people out there that like were like me. I kind of got that sense of belonging and that sense of like that need to fit in that I like needed when I was younger. So that was something, it was a full 180. I was kind of like, all right, now I can be my own person. I have my own story. And yeah, it was a huge like revelation, but
Yeah. So was it like, it sounds like it happens in stages, and perhaps I'm making it in two. Perhaps the previous thing that I said was too short. So you've gone from being desperate to fit in to feeling like you did fit in, to not feeling alone or different anymore, and that the next step on from that is to embrace your difference. So you've gone from kind of alienation to, what would you call it?
Like, I guess a belonging, or like, fitting in.
Yeah, but there's two steps, isn't there? There's two steps. So what I talk about, my own stuff, the anger, the anger of separation, or no, it's about, for me, it's about being enough. So for me, it was the desperation of not feeling enough, to a kind of relief at being at insufficiency, a relief in finding sufficiency, finding that I was enough. And then on the back of that, and this is a bit woo-woo, but I've started, so I'll finish, right? The bliss, the bliss of being the entire universe. And and I don't just mean that's me, that's all of us. So it goes insufficiency, sufficiency, it goes pain, relief, to bliss. It goes in those two stages, and lots of little micro stages along the way, for those micro stages of realizations. That's what you talk about on your website as well. You talk about realizations, and for me, that's the key. So what do you mean by realization?
I think, in what sense? Like what?
Well, so what it says on your website. So what it says, I the last bit that I read off your website was your whole world was flipped upside down, and then I asked you about that, and as you sum it up on the website, suddenly all of my anxiety, confusion, and feelings about being out of place were justified. I wasn't alone. And then you go on to say, for me, it has been a journey of realization and self-love that got me to where I am now. So that's the context for realization. What does realization mean to you?
I think for me, I'm a very, I don't know if it's analytical or logical, or I don't know, but I like to figure things out and like make sense of things. I think that's why I kind of like got on this journey of figuring out my birth family in the first place. So, and I like for things to kind of make sense. So I think that figuring out, like through research and just what adoption is and what, like, the psychology behind adoption and everything that comes with it, that was something where I related so much to it, and I was like, okay, like this makes sense. This makes sense why I went through so many things when I was younger, and why I am what I am now. So I think I've always kind of been looking for that, like the story behind why I'm here, why anyone of us here is here. So coming to all those conclusions was something that like helped me figure out my identity.
So there's there's a relief there.
It is, yeah.
So you've gone from confusion to clarity
Exactly.
over this period.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone through life thinking, why am I thinking like this? Why don't I feel like I fit in? You're looking for all the answers. Then you've had this moment and you thought, oh right, transracial adoption is a thing, and then that's been the catalyst for you to go on that journey, looking for more clarity and answers from everything, in terms of everything from your hair to the birth family to the kind of the whole shebang. So there's a relief there.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it relief, or is it's
almost like a satisfaction? Like, I feel like now that that's like satisfied in my brain, I'm like, okay, now I can like focus on, I'm still learning my identity like every day, but I can focus on more things that I need to figure out. And that's something that I'm happy that I looked at, and I'm still looking at and stuff, but it's something that I like answered a big question of my life.
So like, if I were to use a metaphor, the one that comes to my mind is basically you now know that you're on a solid foundation, you're on a solid footing. The feet of the table alone are no longer rocking. Right? We got so you can now go out into the world and kind of explore, knowing that you've got your underpinnings are secure.
Exactly. Yeah. I have a baseline of my identity now.
You have a baseline of your identity. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing that you talk about there, so you talk about the journey of realization, but you also talk about self-love. So for me, it has been a journey of realization and self-love that got me to where I am now. So on one hand, you've kind of got the left brain, sounds to me, right? You've got the left brain kind of sorted in terms of logic, because you're looking for that compelling logic. But then you've got the self-love stuff, which is the right brain, or even maybe not in the brain. You've moved from the brain to your heart, and you've got that self-love piece rocking as well.
Yeah.
So what does self-love mean to you, and what's been the key parts of that for you?
So I think, as I can't speak for all adoptees, but I think a lot of adoptees kind of go through like people pleasing. And I definitely went through that when I was younger. I still struggle with perfectionism and trying to be better for other people, but also after I kind of figured out a lot of this stuff with my adoption and my identity and everything, I started going to therapy because I was like, I need to figure some stuff out. And my therapist was able to basically just make it so that I realized that I'm not like, a lot of the things that I struggled with when I was younger were because of people pleasing and like trying to be my best for other people and not for myself. So I think once I found out my identity and like who I was able to figure out my own thoughts and my own feelings that I had, because before it was just I could understand other people's thoughts and feelings like really well. And I was like, this is what they want from me. So but once I figured out that, I was like, okay, what do I want? That was like a big thing for me to figure out. Still figuring it out.
Yeah.
But I think that definitely helped me, I guess, as a person and like going through life, because now I know like I'm not living for other people, I'm living for myself.
Yeah. You shifted the focus from an external focus to an internal focus.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what does that, how has that kind of made life, what has that changed for you in day to day stuff, or?
I think so. Before I started going to a therapist and before I kind of like figured all this out, I could not tell you what was going on in my head at all. Like all I knew was I was having feelings, but I just didn't know how to communicate them. Everything was in my head, and I could write them out a little bit, but it was more I just like couldn't understand what I was going through. I would like get angry for no reason. I'd like that's the thing. There was a reason, but I didn't know why I was feeling any type of way. And after I started going to therapy and being able to like talk things out and figure out, so after that, I realized I have a voice and I can actually like now that I understand things, it's a lot easier to communicate them.
Yeah.
And I was always like a shy, quiet person. I never really spoke out in class, or like I was just a very introverted person. And I think like going to therapy and like speaking about my story and speaking about adoption and stuff, that's helped me kind of like break out of my shell and talk to other people about anything because I'm able to understand it more, understand my own thoughts and feelings. And yeah.
Yeah. So you've used the word the psychology of adoption. You used that a couple of times. So it kind of, does it fit in with what we were talking about a minute ago in terms of clarity? Now you've got you can see a cause. You're clear on causation, right? You can see how kind of adoption psychology or adoption the feelings, the trauma stuff was driving you.
Exactly.
Your trauma was driving your behavior. So what was unconscious driven behavior, you became conscious of the drivers of that behavior. So you had the answers not only on your identity, but the behavior that you were doing, the anger.
Yeah. So there was a lot of things like for me, separation anxiety was huge when I was younger. I also, when I was a baby, I literally could not, I was very colicky and stuff, which I think from some research I found out that could be because of the adoption trauma stuff. But I literally could not be put down. Like I had to be held or else I was crying. So like there's a lot of like separation anxiety and stuff that I had when I was like, even like a baby. And then all throughout like I think up to middle school, I still had separation anxiety. So just the fear of loss, the fear of like losing that like love or stuff. So that has been like a lot of things that I've struggled with when I was even going through life now. But something now that I understand like why I have so much anxiety around separation and like around loss is because of a lot of it stems from adoption. So I think that just kind of like quieted my mind a little. I was like, okay, this makes sense that it's from this. Now I can like cope with it. But yeah, so I think I love to figure out, I told you, like I love to figure out why things happen and why what the cause of everything is. So that was something that yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but separation anxiety, perfectionism, like trying to be like my best self. And I would get mad at a lot of little things that I'm trying to think of a specific example, but I don't know. But and also like I think being shy and being quiet when I was younger was because I didn't have a lot of confidence growing up. I wasn't confident in who I was, or I wasn't confident that I was like right about anything. So I think yeah, a lot of that comes from adoption and a lot of other things. But yeah, so that was interesting. I think the separation anxiety was like the number one thing that I was like, wow, okay, this is making sense now that I went through this.
So was that separation anxiety, did it apply to your kind of friends as well as your family? I'm just thinking about transitions, when you go from elementary to to middle school, you go to middle school to high school, and perhaps friendship groups are changing, you're losing friends.
It has, especially like in college, I think, because you find like friends that you think are going to be like in high school, or through like high school and down. I had a lot of the same friends, and it was pretty easy. But my family was always there, so I had like that person there. Like it was always my mom. My mom was like my like rock. Like she was like the one that she was like my security blanket, I like to call it. And
But
then when
that's
I got
what
to
mums are there
college,
for, right? That's what
exactly,
they're there for, yeah.
exactly. hmm Then when I got to college, I had like a roommate that I was like really close with, and like she understood me on like I think understanding is like one of the biggest things I look for in friendships and like in people. And she was like on the same level that I was. And then she ended up like transferring. So that was like a huge like loss, and like it was super hard for me to deal with. And even just like my parents leaving and my mom leaving, because I went to school at first in Vermont. Now I'm in Tampa. So like I kind of had to deal with my parents leaving like multiple times. So that was always something. If I was younger and wasn't completely like if I was like completely still dealing with separation anxiety really badly, I don't think I would have been able to handle being on my own. But now I think it's a lot easier for me because I put that separation anxiety and like put it in my dog, if that makes sense. Like now I have that person that I need to like have my security blanket almost. So it is a lot. Like once in a while I'll be like, oh my God, like I'll feel that anxiety really bad, but it's definitely gotten easier as I've like gotten older. And yeah.
Yeah. You've just helped me see something.
Oh really?
Me, yeah.
hmm
Yeah. So I my best friend at elementary school was going to go to a private school that his dad was going to take an exam to get into a
Yeah.
private school that his dad had been to. And I wanted to be with him, and so I asked mum and dad if I could take the exam, right? And so there's financial implications if I pass this thing. Anyway, I took the exam and I went to school, so back to school, and a couple of weeks later, went to school, and my friend Eddie got a letter in the post saying that he'd passed the exam and he was going to be going to the school. And when I got home, there was no letter for me. Right. So so this is when I'm about 8. I can remember holding on to my mum and telling her about this and crying about the fact that I was going to lose Eddie, right?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't see him at school anymore. And yeah, my mum tried to calm me down, as comfort me. And anyway, the letter arrived the following day, and I passed.
Oh, that's good. That's awesome. Answer the good. That's good. That's awesome.
But something happened a bit later on where we were like in this school, or in schools in the UK in general, and I'm talking in the 70s here. There were no lunchtime supervisors. Like in the playground, there was no teachers, and nobody was watching.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we were young lads, and there were lots of scraps, fights. Like people weren't getting really badly hurt, but that's what kids do, right? Or that's what boys do, especially if they're not supervised. And I remember being in a fight, and Eddie was on the same side as me. Like, so it was me and him versus another couple of kids, right? And then a couple of weeks later, he sided with this other lad that we'd previously found, and the rejection, it's not quite the change inside, the lack of loyalty,
Mm-hmm.
it really got me. It really got me so much that, you know, like 48 years later, it's still fresh in my mind. I can picture me with my mum in my mum and dad's bedroom, telling her that I was going to miss my friend Eddie. I can remember the playground where I saw Eddie as a turncoat, right? You know, turncoat. So he instead of being on my side, he'd flipped over to the enemy, right? And I was thinking, like, how could you do that? I thought you were on my side,
right?
And I'd never linked that to adoption until just now when you talked about fear of loss.
Interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of us like think really deeply about things and like have that like a like fear of abandonment almost. And that's interesting. Like, are you still friends with him or no?
Oh, well, that's another thing, right? The story kind of comes up today ish, but we didn't. He used to go to parties. I used to go to his parties, but we weren't best buddies like we'd been in elementary school after. And he went off to Hong Kong after he went off to university, to college, and then after that he went off to Hong Kong. And then my mum bumped into his wife. Sorry, not his wife. My mum bumped into his mum, going back maybe 15 years ago, just in a local shop. Just so they live maybe 6 miles from one another, and they happen to be in a shop like kind of halfway between the two. And anyway, we swapped the mums must have known the email addresses, or somebody gave email address, which way around. And this guy emailed me. Now he had a printing business in Hong Kong, a printing and a publishing business, and I had a publishing business, and he knew that, right? Somehow, whatever, he'd known that, and he kind of he asked me if he'd like me to. If I'd like him to quote me for some printing work. So he pitched me. He pitched me like on an email, and I just thought, that's nuts, mate. That's
after really, like years of wow.
That's really nuts, you know. That
wow.
Yeah.
And that's the last you've heard from him?
I think we've maybe emailed since a little bit since then.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll be listening. I don't think you'll be listening to the show. So, but yeah, but then but that made me feel like yuck.
Yeah. Understandably.
You know, like you. It's not the kind of the done thing. To pitch all that. Anyway. So yeah, thank you for helping me see those connections, because I think that's what, you know, what I asked you what realization means to you, and I think it's about realizing things. But it's realizing profound things. You know, as you say, we're kind of deep thinkers. We look into stuff. We want answers. We want clarity. We want to know the reason for whatever's happened. And when we realize something, when we see a connection that we've not seen before, like you've helped me to this afternoon or this morning, your time, right? That's helped me see something, and that's a little bit of healing for me. I can see why I was disappointed, shall we say, by this guy's email, and why I felt kind of abandoned by him when he was on the side of the guy that we'd been fighting a couple of days before, a couple of
Right.
weeks before, you know. So when
Yeah.
we see those things, we can see and we can say, okay, well, that's to do with our stuff, really.
Yeah. I
That's
think it's interesting just understanding, like, if you can understand yourself and then understand other people, it's a lot easier to like see why people do things and like why people are the way they are. And I think that's helped me a lot in a lot of different situations, just because I like to look at both sides of the everything. Because I'm just the type of person that I can understand like where people are coming from usually, like from both sides. Um, so that's helped me connect to a lot of different people, but there's only yeah, I don't know. I'm just
yeah.
talking, but yeah.
I've heard something similar from other people, and so if we look at that kind of empathy, if we sum it up in one word, empathy or understanding, your word understanding is probably better. You can look at both sides,
Right?
You can look at both sides, and you can understand stuff, and that makes you a better communicator. So that's a good thing, right? And then we see these people who are we see some adoptees wishing they weren't.
Right.
They're kind of like they feel that they're shape shifting. They feel they're shifting from one that they're kind of rudderless, and I guess we all feel rudderless sometimes. It's not, you know, some people are rudderless and some people have got a rudder, got an anchor, whatever. It's the degree to which we are standing our ground, whether we're confident in our foundations, you know, setting our foundation. But some people will see that as a bad thing.
Yeah.
The ability to see two sides as a bad thing.
Yeah. I think what
It's not, is it?
No. I think what the number one thing that I went to like for adoption specifically is like by seeing both sides is I think a lot of adoptees have anger towards like their birth parents or like towards like why was I adopted in the first, like why was I so I think that was one of the things that helped me a lot, was seeing that like your birth parents are just people. They have, and for me personally, I don't know personally my birth parents. My birth mother passed away like 2 years before I found her and stuff, so I don't know a lot in that story, but I do know like we're all human. We all like make certain decisions because of certain things. So having a little bit of like sympathy for the fact that we're all just trying to live our lives, and things happen and people are sometimes not good people, but it helps to know that there could be a reason for everything that someone decides to do.
That's the episode of the podcast that I released today was on that subject, right? And it was it's about those healing moments,
right?
Being infinite, not infinite. They go on forever, right? So you're mid-20s, yeah?
I'm 22 or 23. Oh my gosh, 23.
23, okay. So I was talking to a fellow adoptee for this. Oh, my brain's fit. I'm 56, right? So I can't bloody remember. She had a pseudonym as well, which often throws me as well. Yeah, June. She's called June Wright, a Brit adoptee called June Wright.
Okay.
And the title. It's episode 399, and it was a profound moment. She's a couple of years older than me, I think. So we're both in our 50s, right? And I think she's a couple of years older than me. gentlemen don't ask, right? So, but I asked you, didn't I? I said mid-20s. But I kind of knew, yeah. So, just
it'd be a different story if I was like a lot older.
yeah. Get to the point, Simon. So she had this realization, like a couple of weeks ago when she was on night. She works nights sometimes, she was on night shift, and she had this realization that her birth mother didn't reject her, June. She rejected parenting. She decided that parenting wasn't right for her
Exactly.
in that at that time of her life.
Right.
But not as kind of just as a nice idea.
Mm-hmm.
That was a profound realization. That was something that was deep, and it wasn't just a fleeting thought. Oh, maybe she. Right. It wasn't that. It was something, and I think the deeper that we can not take stuff personally, even we use the word play. We use the word placed, don't we? People talk about the placed for adoption.
Yeah.
That sounds better than
given up.
Than given up. And placed, and that there was an adoption plan, and so for me, the moment when I realized that there was an adoption plan before I was born, and so my birth mother was like June Wright's birth mother. She was of the opinion in her at that point that parenting wasn't right for her, and
right.
But and so is adoption personal? I mean,
I think that's the thing. It's a hard question, but I think that there's a lot of things in general. So I think for a while, for like a second, I was mad at like adoption agencies and stuff, and I think that stemmed from the fact that there were a lot of stories that I read out there that like the parents couldn't afford to have a kid or like have a, so then I was like, why is there not like funding for that? Why is it like, because so I think a lot of that, but also at the same time, I don't know, it's hard. That's the thing, if you put yourself in the birth parents' shoes, I wouldn't, and I feel like a lot of people wouldn't like see a baby and be like, oh yeah, like we're person, like I can't have you like that. I don't think that that's what happens the majority of the time.
So interesting you come to the financial aspects, because here in the UK now only 1% of adoptions in the UK are consensual adoptions. 99% of them is because the kid has been taken away from the birth mother because of, well, lifestyle, should we call it, lifestyle issues, or endangerment, or like I'm laughing when I say lifestyle, and because I can't do the thing justice. I can't do that justice. So only 1% are voluntary adoptions in the UK, and that and you say you think that money should be there, right? Well, our social services, one of the differences between the UK and the US is that our social services give more money to people.
Right.
Yeah. So our safety net, our social services safety net is higher and deeper than it is in the US. And in the US, you're far more, it's about empowerment. It's about, if it's up to me, it's bound to be me. And I have heard some interesting, some people in the US criticizing that, right? and I thought it was an interesting way. But some people in Britain criticize it as well. They say that social services gives too much money to people and makes it easy for them not to have a job and all these sorts of things.
Right.
Some more right-leaning things. But yeah, only 1% of birth mothers, of adoptions, come from a birth mother who is placing their child voluntarily. And I believe that the money changing hands, right? So no money changes hands in the UK for adoption, apart from like some small court fees. So it might be like a couple £100, £250.
Right.
I don't know what it is, but it's definitely not in the realms of the money that is on. And that, when I first saw a price list for adoptees and it's different colors, different prices for different colors, I was almost sick. So
it's disturbing.
It is very disturbing. And I feel that it adds another layer of, well, it encourages trafficking and stuff, which you would be less able to get away with in the UK.
Right.
But I do think it's another layer of trauma. The fact that there's a price on a head.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's something that I feel grateful for not having. Do you know what I mean? Because I can see how it can form another layer of trauma. So you've got the relinquishment trauma. You've got, well, first off, you've got generational trauma. So what happened to our parents, ancestors? What happened? The trauma that they went through prior to the relinquishment, the trauma that we went through with the separation, the trauma of like a transracial adoptee who not only doesn't feel like they fit in, don't look like they fit in. You've got and then and then we put the money thing. So it's these layers. It's these layers of trauma that I figure I've had an easy time of it because I haven't had that. So.
Yeah, but I think that's why it's so important that like adoptees speak out, and like, because a lot of the times even like adoption agencies or birth mothers, they're not thinking about trauma. They're thinking, oh, like this will be better for money wise, or like my life, or like, so I think a lot of the times we kind of get like pushed on, we're like, oh, like they'll go to like a better family, but then all that trauma that you just mentioned is like completely like forgotten. So I think that's why it's so important for like adoptees to speak out about like their experiences and why it's important to
that's
advocate for things like that.
And that's why you're doing what you're doing. So I'm conscious of time, it's flying past. Is there any last thing you'd like to, comments you'd like to share, anything like you'd like to say, Sydney?
I feel like there's a lot of things that like came up. I was like, I need to say this.
Okay, we'll do it. We'll do another. We'll do another interview down the line. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely.
Good on you. And as always, listeners, check out the guests' podcasts and socials in the show notes. And thanks again, Sydney. It's been great. Really enjoyed it. Like, there's a lot of wisdom here.
Yeah,
a lot of wisdom. Right, you've been through a lot, and you've gathered a lot of wisdom through it. I've had try to say that without being patronizing, right?
I've had a lot of people throughout my life say that I'm a lot older than I should be, or like I've like have a brain that's much older than. So I don't know what that means, but we'll see.
Good on you. Thanks, listeners, and we'll speak to you very soon. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much.